This is CNN, a network of Turner Broadcasting System.
Welcome to Larry King Live. Tonight, violence, slick art, and sadistic sex. Your kids may be reading all about it in the comic books. And prepare to be entranced by the incredible, amazing Kreskin. Now, here's Larry King.
Good evening from Washington. She's a sadomasochistic prostitute with a taste for leather. He's depraved and a homicidal maniac. Who are they? Well, they're none other than the Catwoman and the Joker. No fooling. The funnies have changed a lot since we were kids. The comic books your kids are reading may contain violence, sex, bondage, and death. Critics say the books are corrupting our youth and should be tightly controlled. Their creators claim the comics are a free form of expression, constitutionally protected. To discuss both sides of that issue, we have invited to Larry King Live, Dennis Kitchen. He is the founder of Kitchen Sink Press. They publish Omaha the Cat Dancer, a comic book series for adults which was found obscene by an Illinois District Court judge. They also publish Flash Gordon and Little Abner and are a major figure in the comic book world. And Dr. Thomas Radecki of the National Coalition on Television Violence. He has participated in protests against comic books for their graphic depiction of violence. Was there a period of time, Dennis, when the comic books, and we have some examples here of Batman and Superman, and we'll go through some of these that are rather shocking. I'm talking Marvel Comics, DC Comics, who, by the way, were invited to participate tonight and declined to appear. When did this change start to occur? When did comic books get a little more violent?
Well, they've always been violent, Larry.
Always?
Well, sure.
When we were kids?
Sure. You have a bad memory if you don't remember it. They're always violent. They're action-oriented. And Superman maybe didn't kill people, but he certainly roughed up the villains, and Batman would, be using his fists. Originally, he had a gun, in fact. The publicity in the last few months, or years actually, have focused on the comics becoming more adult in all kinds of areas. Violence is just one facet of comics. They're simply appealing to an older audience. They're not kid stuff ananymore.
You publish adult comic books.
In
comic
part.
Books that are
represent about 10% of what we do.
Right, where there's sexual scenes and...
In the context of an appropriate plot, yeah.
Like the kind of thing that used to be sold outside of high schools, right?
No, you're thinking of 8-pagers, which were out-and-out pornography. What we're doing, the Omaha you mentioned, for example, has been widely praised by critics throughout the country. It's a true erotic soap opera, is what it is. And
sold in the same place comic books are sold? In
specialty shops, yes. And it's aimed at a literate adult audience. About 1/3 of the readership is women, as a matter of fact, and it's extremely popular.
What's your concern, Tom?
Oh, our concern has been a concern since the early days of comic books. Actually, there were congressional hearings back in 1954 about the issue of violence in comics. We didn't have sex in comics back then. We still don't have that much sex in children's comics, the ones that are the biggest sellers nationwide in bookstores. But in most bookstores, your comic books are actually the most violent section of the bookstore, Larry.
And are you saying to people, you agree with the First Amendment, right? So you don't want to put them out of business, do you? What's your goal?
Well, we would like to educate people. We'd certainly like people to stop buying the violent comics, which, if people did that, would put some of the companies out of business. I don't know if it would. There's certainly Archie comics and other comics that are nonviolent. Nonviolent television entertainment certainly gets an awful lot of viewers.
So you're a warning group rather than you don't want to burn them off the shelves. You're not banners, censors.
Well, I don't think we can burn them off the shelves, Larry, but I think we do want to warn people that the evidence is really clear that this type of material would have a harmful effect on normal children and adult readers. I don't want to say everything in comics is bad. There are actually good comics, Larry.
Well, according to your staff, who I've been spending the last half hour with, they all grew up with comics, and most of them still read them and collect them, and they all seem like a normal bunch to me. You yourself grew up with comics.
Our staff?
Yeah, they're all comic fans.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to hold them up as an
Well, I love
example.
comic books. Didn't you love comic books as a kid?
Actually, my father was a physician, and I grew up. He must have been influenced by the congressional hearings back then, and the psychiatrist Fred Wortham was concerned about the violence, and he told me that we couldn't read the superhero comics that were so violent back in the 50s as they are today. But we watched a lot. There were a lot of other non-violent comics, everything from your Mickey Mouse and Donald
But
Duck.
Superman, Captain Marvel, Superman weren't considered violent comics.
Well, it depends how you define it. I mean, they were fighting Nazi saboteurs, and they were always battling somebody. I mean, they didn't...
I don't think they ever killed people. I don't think Superman ever killed a person.
No. They didn't do that. But again, violence doesn't imply killing. Depends on...
Now, what do you think... We're going to show some scenes from some. What do you think the bad is? In other words, what results when I see, if I'm 8 years old, a violent scene in a comic book? What do you think is the result of that?
Well, actually, we're not against violence totally, but the way the violence is portrayed, and over again in most of these comics, almost all of them, the good guys win through violence over and over again. The bad guys are described as despicably evil, hateful, loathsome. We're actually teaching people to hate their enemy, and to try to kill their enemy. That's the only way to solve problems.
Now, here we're looking at a scene, gentlemen. It's over. You can't see it. I don't know why the gentleman can't see it on them. The gentleman's monitors aren't on, so it's over there. This is from Wolverine, and this depicts a woman in chains. This is fairly common, Dennis?
No, I wouldn't say so at all. No.
Catwoman in an S&M-like attire. Get ready, folks. Here's Superman with dynamite in the mouth. This is from Batman, knife through someone's head. Batman is Christ. Batman kissing Catwoman. Catwoman scratching Batman. The Punisher, blood in the mouth. The Punisher, knife at the woman. From Omaha, one of your productions, Cats on cover. The cat's on the cover there. From Wolverine, a 3-frame virgin sacrifice. And from Batman, we even have a naked man tied up. Things have changed. Dennis.
Well, yeah, they have, Larry, but you have to understand, now these are taken out of context in the sense, yeah. The comic book field has grown in all respects. The comics you've shown, I certainly don't deny exist. However, they are done by the two major publishers, and then, obviously, in their opinion, these are the comics that are going to sell for them. They're in it to make money. There's no question about it. There are an awful lot of other people in the field who are creating comics with well-rounded characters who aren't into sadomasochism and bondage and the things they're showing.
That really is the standard comics. That's what's selling across America. When we go out to bookstores, that's what we see. And there are far more violent, I mean, those are very common. Those are normal. Torture scenes are normal and standard. Extreme brutality. We find 50, 100, 150 acts of violence per typical comic book. The average comic book is averaging about that many. I mean, you think that the kid reads a comic book in about 18, 19 minutes. He's getting an awful lot of violence in each comic book he reads. It's really some of the most violent entertainment that's out there. A lot of times it's reflecting and growing out of what's on television. You've got
why does it appeal to us? Why do we like comic books?
Hey, when I got to the hotel tonight, the doorman told me not to walk the streets alone tonight in Washington, D.C. Now, that's real violence. We're talking violence on paper, which is another thing altogether. We're talking fantasy. But comics, today's creators are interested in reflecting the real world. And there's no question there's a lot of violence in the world, and that is one facet of comics. There are an awful lot of other facets, too.
These comics don't reflect the real world. They're showing us over and over again that violence is necessary, that violence is the only way to win. The good guys win repeatedly through violence and very frequently killing. These are very brutal and sadistic comics. They don't reflect the real world at all.
Do you have anything against the adult comics? That specifically say adult comics that are
some of the
sexual?
Adult comics I've seen are quite pornographic. I think that they're really using very explicit sexual intercourse and lesbian scenes, etc., as a way of hooking, exciting the reader, just like a porn magazine. I don't see the big difference.
Our guests are Dennis Kitchen, the founder of Kitchen Sink Press, and Dr. Thomas Radecki of the National Coalition on TV Violence. This is Larry King Live. Your phone calls will be included. We're talking comic books, and we'll be back after this.
unforgettable. The way she touches.
The way she moves.
She has to have that tutti frutti beauty.
Revlon new complexion makeup and powders. Irresistibly weightless.
Great cheekbones.
Flawless.
Femininity.
Glorious.
The way she flirts.
Created exclusively by us. What makes a woman unforgettable? Her laugh. Unforgettable Revlon.
Why a Canon color laser copier? Why a Canon color laser copier? Because only a full-color copy of a full-color original is a copy. The Canon color laser copier. Digital color makes the difference. Call toll-free 1-800-OK-CANON.
When people count on you, count on Post-it brand notes.
On CNN's Evening News, protection against pregnancy or AIDS? Is sex education losing one of these wars? Tonight, 10 Eastern on CNN. Still to come tonight, the amazing Kreskin. Thursday night, Jim Abbott. He has only one hand. He throws the ball 94 miles an hour for the California Angels. Dennis Kitchen is the founder of Kitchen Sink Press, and Dr. Thomas Radecki is with the National Coalition on TV Violence. What basically are you saying, Tom, is don't think when your kids get down and bring home a bunch of comic books, it's like you think that it's nothing, right?
Right. I think a family has to have a basic rule in the house that violence or explicit sexual material is not to be used as a means of entertainment. Primarily, we're not talking about sex here. We're talking about very explicit violence. And whether it's in a book form or on television or a video cassette or a video game, the research is really quite clear that will have a harmful effect on normal children, desensitize them to violence, make it more likely they'll lose their tempers, and even think that violence is the best way to deal with interpersonal and even international problems.
Dennis, are you saying there's no conclusive proof between one and the other?
I don't think there's been any conclusive studies, but I agree with the good doctor that I would not want my 8-year-old to read some of the extra violent comics. I think it's a parental supervision that's important, as always, when you're dealing with your kids. But you have to understand, when juveniles are looking for forms of entertainment, and comics have always been popular with juveniles as well as adults today, they're going to be looking for things they relate to. And an adolescent boy is going to be interested in this kind of macho images. They're very aggressive at this age, and it's understandable some of these would appeal to them. I personally don't publish comics aiming at that demographic group.
Do you condemn DC and Marvel for?
I don't condemn them. I think some of their books are inappropriate for children and maybe ought to be marked more clearly, but that's their business decision.
Los Angeles, we'll go to your calls. Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Hello.
Hello?
Go ahead, you're on.
Okay, I'm a cartoonist, Frank Miller, calling from Los Angeles.
Hi.
Comment on this because we've been dealing with this sort of thing in comics for several years now, first with the evangelists and now with people like Mr. Radecki. I'd like to point out one thing that Mr. Radecki said when you mentioned the word censorship. He said that it was impossible, that they can't censor. I'd like to point out that it's quite possible that there's a modern way that affects almost every kind of media we see. I'd also like to point out what it does. Network standards and practices have made children's television so utterly valueless and pointless that there's no sense of good nor evil, nor even a sense of story most of the time in it. And it's certainly been a way to institutionalize pressure groups. So rather than working on providing good entertainment, our entertainers have instead been just bouncing around trying to second-guess people like Mr. Radecki.
So you're saying there is censorship?
In effect, yes.
Yeah. You want to want to comment, Thomas?
That's not censorship. Censorship by the First Amendment is the government intervening ahead of time in banning, for citizens to speak out against violence. That's not a form of censorship. That's a form of democracy. That's a form of moral obligation that we all have to protest the promotion of violence, protest the promotion of rape and brutality. And anybody that doesn't think that that's part of freedom and part of required democratic action, he's trying to censor appropriate democratic action by saying that I have no right to speak out.
He does have a right to speak, doesn't he, Frank? I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. You have every right to speak out, but it amazes me how many of you people end up getting hired by the people that you speak out against.
I don't make any money doing this. It cost me money. I've lost $1,000 today from seeing patients in my psychiatric practice. I'm $1,000 poorer than I would have been to be able to talk to you tonight.
Frank, what do you draw?
I drew a Batman comic before. The Dark Knight Returns was the name of it. I've drawn a variety of different comic books. I've worked for about 12 years in the field. Most of what I've done has been what's generally regarded as the children's comics up until recently. But there's a whole new division that's been developing, and by and large, with some errors, it's mostly pretty much identified by cover graphics and by story content, whether it's for kids or not. The fact is, most of the work I've done in the last 3 years, a child would find very difficult to understand, and that's generally true of most of the stuff that people are complaining about.
I know Bob Kane pretty well. He doesn't draw Batman anymore?
Oh, no, he hasn't for years.
Yeah, he was the first one. He created him.
Yeah. Frank's a very respected member of the comics community. And what he's saying is true. A lot of the comics that Frank is doing, even if they contain some violence, they're not going to appeal to kids. They're not accessible to children because they're illiterate comics, and the vocabulary is not going to appeal to them. The sophisticated storytelling techniques are not going to be really appropriate for kids. It's better, kids have Donald Duck comics, Little Lulu comics, and a variety of comics, which a lot of them learn how to read on.
Thanks, Frank. We go to Smithville, Texas. Hello.
Hello, Larry. I think Dr. Radecki's full of hot air. I'm 31 years old, and I've been reading comics since I was a kid, and I have no desire to go out and rape and kill. And besides that, a lot of the modern comics that are written today are designed for adults, and most of them are bought by readers over 18. I go into a local comic shop, and I very seldom see any children come in there. It's mostly students and adults. So I think that he's just wrong, and this is the same thing that Dr. Wortham in the 50s was coming up with, and I think he was wrong too, and I think Radecki's just as wrong also.
I think there's a common misguided idea, Larry, that as long as you haven't murdered or raped anybody, you haven't been affected. And then when somebody does murder or rape anybody, it's always, well, where did you get a strange idea like that? Actually, only 1 out of every 131 men will ever murder somebody in his life, and only 1 out of every 6 men will ever rape a woman in America. It's a lot higher than the women of America would like, but it still means 5 out of 6 of us don't rape somebody. The most common effect of violent entertainment is we lose our tempers more often. We become desensitized to violence. We're more likely to support violent solutions when really nonviolent ones would work better.
Do you also attack, therefore, old John Wayne movies?
We find fault with old John Wayne movies. The vast majority of them, John Wayne wasn't always a bad guy. He tried to support peace with Panama and work out a treaty with Panama. But
he also, in movies, settled fights with his fists.
Unfortunately, that glamorized and promoted violence as a way of, matter of fact, the only way in his movies, most of his movies, of dealing with problems, whereas in reality, for instance, the average American police officer fires his gun once every 27 years. The Chicago police force solved 96 hostage situations in a row without having to use any violence. That's not the message you get from comics.
Didn't we think, Dennis, that television would put the comics out of business?
Oh, sure. That argument was made, and there's no question there was a lull in comics when TV first started. They compete for dollars and energy and time. But
how many comic books are sold every month in America? Do we know?
I don't have those figures, but it's been described as a $300 million a year industry. But the caller is right about most comic shops being populated by adults. Not that many kids come in and buy comics, and they're also very expensive these days.
There was a teenage fad for Archie, though, for a while, weren't there? Teenage girls reading Archie?
Well, there's always a few, sure. I mean, it's still a popular comic.
We'll be right back with Dennis Kitchen and Thomas Radecki and more of your phone calls. Then the amazing Kreskin. This is Larry King Live. Don't go away. On CNN, are their demands about to be met? Chinese students versus the Chinese government. Tomorrow morning on CNN's Daybreak.
America, you look like you need a holiday. A fair dinkum holiday. In the land of wonder. The land down under. Now, there's a few things I got to warn you about. Firstly, you're going to get wet. Because the place is surrounded by water. Oh, and you're going to have to learn to say good day. Because every day's a good day in Australia.
G'day, Paul.
G'day, love. Of course, you'll have to get used to some of the local customs, like getting a suntan at a restaurant, playing football without a helmet, and calling everyone mate. Thanks, mate.
She's right, mate.
Apart from that, no worries. You'll have the time of your life in Australia. Of course, we talk the same language. Although you lot do have a funny accent. Oh, before you rush out to book your Aussie holiday, call this toll-free number for your free Aussie holiday book. Come on. Come and say good day. I'll slip an extra shrimp on the barbie for you.
Come and say good day.
Technology has finally conquered space. The space between your teeth. With Interplaque, its bristles rotate 4,200 times a minute, gently reaching into the spaces between teeth and along the gums to clean your mouth nearly plaque-free every time you brush. Interplaque, the high-tech answer to a down-to-earth need.
Attention, shredded wheat eaters, you've been missing something. Taste, but no more. Kellogg's Squares brings you that superlative shredded wheat nutrition with no salt, no fat, no cholesterol. But wait, Kellogg's Squares give you free in every bite. Taste. Sweet, delectable fruit in the middle. You might never eat plain old shredded wheat again. Kellogg's Squares, shredded wheat with taste, free in every bite. And speaking of taste, now Squares have 35% more raisin. Great taste, free.
This is Superman, folks. This don't look like a typical Superman cover to me. Like Superman's up here in the left-hand corner. The rest of the cover ain't involving Superman, Dennis.
No, it's not a typical one.
No. Okay, back to the calls, and we go to Kelso, Washington. Hello.
Yes, I grew up with the Three Stooges like millions of others, and I've often heard that they, even though they were trying to be funny and they had the violence that they were known for with the slapping in the eyes and stuff, I was wondering if they would be considered a bad influence also. And the reason I ask is one of the Portland, Oregon television stations in this area used to show the Three Stooges at 2 o'clock in the morning every night. They wouldn't do it earlier because they felt that kids would see that and try to imitate them. And I was wondering if that's generally the idea.
You think so, Tom?
It's actually unusually good judgment by the broadcaster. There's actually a research study with the Three Stooges showing that normal children are more likely to get into fights after watching the Three Stooges than something else. And I can certainly vouch from my childhood. I fought more often with my brothers than I should have. And I can definitely link my violent entertainment with some increase in fighting. It was a childhood.
Well, I think they're stupid. I don't think they're harmful, but...
Well, the research shows they're harmful. There's actually a research study shown that kids actually get into fights more often. Actually, well,
and I know that everyone that I know grew up with them, and they're normal. And
well, now wait a minute. Our nation has become markedly more violent in the last generation. A research study just published this month in the in April, in the American Journal of Epidemiology, looking at the introduction of television and television violence in the United States and Canada, and at the same time in South Africa, where they hadn't gotten television yet, estimates based upon the research data that 50% of the murders in our society, that violent entertainment is playing a factor.
What is it, like accepting violence as a way of life? Is that the concept? That we have come to accept it as a way of life?
Yes, it's become so much a part of us that we don't realize that we didn't used to be this violent of people. We don't realize that 50 years ago, people by the thousands used to sleep in Central Park in New York because it was hot during the summer. Some people still can't afford air conditioning, but you don't find them sleeping in Central Park anymore.
Tom's River, New Jersey, hello.
Good evening. My name is Howard Bender, creator of Mr. Fix-It, and I don't think you're not talking about all the good things comic books do.
What do they do good?
Well, it's like
other than entertain, they entertain.
Of course, it's very entertaining, and it also helps children to, it's like the first step in reading. It's like,
no question.
They may pick up a comic book instead of picking up another.
I think the doctor here is very unusual in that he didn't grow up with comics, and maybe that's warped his view and notion of comics.
No, I grew up with comics, but I grew up with nonviolent comics. I didn't read a lot of comics. I read educational books about people in other countries, books about nature,
so do most kids
biographies. No, most kids today don't read. They're mostly involved in fiction. But I don't want to say everything bad about comics. Archie teaches some good lessons about social interaction, but 90% or more of comics really are just wall-to-wall violence, just teaching violence as a way of solving problems.
That's really a gross distortion of what's out there.
No, that's based upon surveys at local Midwest, maybe in Omaha where you are, or maybe in certain adult bookstores, but if you go out and you look at normal bookstores, that's what you find on the comic book shelves. We've looked.
We have Mr. Fix-It, and we don't have it in the studio here, but we do have a copy of it. How well does that do, Howard?
It did pretty well. We're playing our third issue now.
Let me get one more call in. Hammond, Indiana. Hello.
Yes, I was curious to ask him. He said that the comic books today don't reflect the average goings-on in big cities.
Right.
I think that's just the opposite. The older comic books were more make-believe, because you would, in every issue, like in Superman, he would fight a new supervillain here, a new supervillain there. And Frank Miller, who was on your show earlier...
we're running out of time when you get this. Do you agree that today...
Comics are more realistic, there's no question. The creators are trying to reflect the world they live in.
I think there's some truth to that. And actually they're trying to teach a good message in many of them. But the problem is they teach violence as a way of solving it.
Thank you both very much. We're going to do more on this. From the Kitchen Sink Press, Dennis Kitchen, and Dr. Thomas Radecki of the National Coalition on TV Violence. Kreskin is next. Don't go away.